Hello and welcome to my latest video now. As you can see, this is a more modern fighter. The reason for that is the division he started in that I'm wanting to open cruiserweight did not come around until the 3-belt era, into the 4-belt era. So therefore, every cruiserweight I cover will be from the last 50 just under 50 years. So I begin cruiserweight playlist with David Haye, the Haymaker. So when we go on to David Haye's major opponents, okay, he fought and lost of course to Vladimir Klitschko, courtesy of the Pinky. He then twice fought and lost to Tony Bellew later in his career. The first fight was actually quite an upset. I think Bellew did really well, and the second fight Bellew scored another good win. Now people, Haye fans said, oh well, David Haye got injured. You know, that's just what happens. You know, you can go into a fight and suffer a back cut and get stopped. You can go into a fight and suffer an injury. You know, it's the law of nature. If something happens and you lose, you've lost. So next up, okay, on the list is John Ruiz, of course, whom David Haye defeated in a heavyweight title defence. He also beat the giant Nikolai Valuev to become a heavyweight champion. Next on the list is Enzo Maccarinelli. David Haye destroyed him, and he also defeated unified cruiserweight champion Jean-Marc Mormick. All of these, except for Tony Bellew, are singular fights. And when we get to the more modern time in other divisions, the main divisions, you'll see that a lot of the more modern fighters only fight the major opponents once. You know, people like Pacquiao broke that code, you know, by having trilogies, quadrilogies, etc. But a lot of modern fighters you'll see fight each opponent only once. Next up is former cruiserweight champion Giacomo Fragameni, whom David Haye also defeated, and of course he lost that early fight after firing absolute blitzes at Carl Thompson, the wily old cat. Managed to survive the storm, come back against the tiring Haye and score a stoppage. That's a great win for Carl Thompson there, so he defeated David Haye. Next on the list is Arthur Williams. David Haye defeated him, and Haye also in a singular fight defeated Alexander Gurov. Next up is heavyweight Monty Barrett. David Haye defeated him in a singular fight, and he also defeated in a singular fight the UK heavyweight, the much loved Derek Chisora, who may not win all his fights, but pretty much gives his all in every single fight, win or lose. So David Haye has their 13 fights listed there. Didn't have a massive career, only 32 fights. From those 13 fights, David Haye has 9 wins, 4 losses and no draws. So going on to David Haye's stats, we can see he scored 26 knockouts in his career, 18 of them in 3 rounds or less, and David Haye also scored 9 first round wins. Now Haye scored 5 KOs against champions. He scored 0 against Hall of Famers and 0 against pound for pounders, and David Haye scored a total of 7 KOs against rated fighters. Now in rounds boxed, Haye doesn't score very well, you know, compared to many fighters we've been looking at who have fought hundreds of rounds against Hall of Famers, some of them. David Haye had a small career, and also being a big puncher, a lot of his fights were brief. So Haye fought a total of 138 rounds in his career. He fought a total of 45 title fight rounds, and David Haye fought totals of 75 rounds against champions, 12 rounds against a Hall of Famer, and 12 rounds against a pound for pounder. Against rated opponents, David Haye fought 81 rounds against top 10 fighters, and when you put that in perspective against Rosenblum's 1,500 plus, it's a staggering perspective. David Haye fought 47 rounds against top 3 rated fighters and 19 rounds against ring champions. So for David Haye, we go on to his slide against champions. David Haye had 10 fights against champions, so just under a third of his total career fights. In that total were 6 wins, 4 losses and no draws, and David Haye defeated 6 individual champions. They were John Ruiz, Nikolai Valuev, Jean-Marc Mormick, Enzo Maccarinelli, Giacomo Fragameni and Arthur Williams. And from those 6 champions, David Haye scored knockout or stoppage over 5 of them, only Valuev going the distance of course. So Haye stopped John Ruiz, Jean-Marc Mormick, Enzo Maccarinelli, Giacomo Fragameni and Arthur Williams. So obviously showing his big punching power there. Virtually all the champions he defeated, did not go the distance, barring Valuev. So on to Hall of Fame slide. David Haye at the moment only has one fight against a Hall of Famer, of course. That was a defeat, so his record is no wins, one loss, no draw. Therefore, David Haye has defeated no Hall of Fame fighters and scored knockouts over 0 Hall of Fame fighters. And it's the same tale with the pound-for-pound fighters. David Haye has had one fight with a record of no wins, one loss, no draw. Therefore, David Haye has defeated no pound-for-pound rated fighters and scored knockouts over 0 pound-for-pound rated fighters. So going on to record against rated opponents for David Haye, of course, I don't have to say my famous mantra because he's in the rating era. David Haye had 12 fights against top 10 fighters, including 8 wins, 4 losses and no draws. He had 6 fights against top 3 rated fighters. That included a split record of 3 wins, 3 losses, no draws. And David Haye also has a split record from 2 fights against ring champions, scoring 1 win with 1 loss and no draws. So all in all, David Haye defeated 8 individual rated fighters and he scored knockouts over 7 individual rated fighters, again showing that punch power there from his victories. So on to title fight stats. David Haye had a total of 6 world title fights. His title fight record stands at 5 wins, 1 loss and no draws. David Haye made 3 title defences and he scored a total of 4 title fight knockouts. Now against rated opponents in title fights, David Haye scored 4 wins against top 10 fighters, 2 wins against top 3 fighters and 1 win against a ring champion. Now from his title fight wins, David Haye scored 4 wins against champions, 0 wins against Hall of Famers and 0 wins against pound for pound rated fighters. So not a big title record, but he is quite accomplished, albeit a small title fight record. When we look at his titles won, David Haye in terms of world titles captured in his career, the WBC Cruiserweight title, the WBA Cruiserweight title, the WBO Cruiserweight title and of course the WBA Heavyweight title. David Haye did hold one lineal title in his career, that was the Lineal Cruiserweight Championship, but he was unified but never undisputed champion at either cruiserweight where he was unified and heavyweight where he was not unified. So there is the video of a modern era fighter, okay, the first one, but like I said, the cruiserweights, you know, started in the early days when Marvin Kamel and Kawi and all those guys were around fighting in its early time, at one point called the junior heavyweight division, then renamed the cruiserweight division. It's a more modern division, so every fighter I cover on it will be from the last 50 years. So all of them will be glitzy and in colour with their images. So there's David Haye. I've opened super featherweight with Benny Bass. I've opened super bantamweight with Jack Kid Wolf. I've now opened cruiserweight with David Haye. Coming over coming days, along with videos on Benny Leonard, Babe Herman, is also a video opening up the minimum weight division with the great Mexican King Ricardo Lopez, of course. Another more modern division where everyone's going to be in Technicolor and all fighters will be from the modern era. But there, I'm happy to get another division open. I don't know when I'll be doing my next cruiserweight, but I'm just slowly now starting to move to a point where I want every playlist with at least one fighter on. And then as I continue with the 1899-30 era on the main 8 divisions, I will every now and then add in fighters into intermediate divisions. So there is David Haye, first cruiserweight in, many more to go. I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.